Alright, for this week's tip of the week, it's going to be a multi-part installation. So in the next 4 weeks, I'm going to show you how I weather my models. This first part, we're going to be showing how to sand parts that need to be sanded. The next week, we'll probably either be doing silver paint or black paint, and then we'll be doing brown paint, and then black paint. It'll be 4 parts. I'll explain more as we get into it. For the first part, all you're going to need is your models. I'm going to be doing one of my PC300 here, and then also my new 850K. I decided 2 models just to show you how you do various models or whatever. And then you also need some sandpaper. I have no idea how you classify sandpaper, but there's some information about this sandpaper. I don't know what that means. It's just fine grit sandpaper for me. And I just cut a piece of that off. A lot of people say you're not supposed to use scissors for this, but I've used this pair of scissors for a lot of this. They still work. Alright, for sanding, things you want to sand. Especially if you're going to have your model on a diorama or do stop motions with it or whatever, you want to make sure you sand high wear areas. So the tops of the grousers on the pads will need to be sanded. And to get a realistic look, I like to sand the rough parts of the counterweight that might have gotten scraped against a pile of dirt. Or on your blade, you want to sand these corners in here, and sand this whole part down. Sand the tops of the track pads. That way, so anything that's high wear, might get chipped off, won't show through when you're messing around with the diorama, because the last thing you want is a high wear area of the machine looking like it's brand new. So go ahead and show you what some of that is. Start here on the 850K, flip it upside down, and what we'll do is we'll just take our sandpaper and just sand away on the tracks here until we get a nice silvery look. Sorry if this sounds really bad on the audio. Alright, there we go. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's kind of hard to tell. There, you can see it. You can see how in here you can see the tops of the grousers are a little more silver than they are down here. And Earl paint tends to be pretty thick along with Norscot paint, so it'll take a little bit more elbow grease to get it off. Make sure you sand all the tops of the grousers down. The same thing will go for this PC300 when we get to it. And for your blade, and this goes for flat lip wheel loader buckets too. What you'll want to do is sand down, this front edge here till you get it all nice and silver. Don't worry, you won't hurt the model with fine grit sandpaper, so you can go ahead and do some sanding. And you won't lose much detail doing this either. That's the other good news. And make sure you always support the model well when you're sanding, because you don't want to break anything off. Alright, you can see that there. Let's get a bit of light angle on it. You can see that I've sanded off this whole edge here now. It's all nice and shiny. That's exactly how you want it. So you also do these, the scalloped edges of the blade there. Then you don't have to do the main face of the blade. You can if you want. You can really overachieve, but most of the time I'll just paint that all silver. I'll show you that later. Another place I like to sand is on the track frames themselves. Go ahead and sand them down. The main reason I like to do this is it looks like when you run the sandpaper back and forth across it, it makes it look a lot like the machine's been dragging through the dirt for a long time. I think this is the most realistic way to get this look. Paint can do the same thing, just a little harder. First, you can see the paint starts to change tint a little bit there. And also you can see the silver start to come through in some of these places. Get your sand ring here. Alright. And you can start to see the silver coming through. And you continue to do that depending on how much you want this machine to look like it's been weathered. That's as much as I want to do for this machine since it's a fairly new machine. On excavators, there's a couple other places, mostly the bucket. Make sure you sand the bottom of the bucket. So you take your sandpaper and just run it all along the bottom. Take off all that paint. And I also like to do the sides of the bucket too. So you get your your wear plates done, and then if you really want to, you can sand the sides of the bucket. But you can also do the teeth. Some people, if this manual sanding's too slow for you, you can use a Dremel too, a little fine-tooth sanding bit. I recommend that sometimes for large areas like the bottom of the excavator bucket, because you'd be sanding that paint off for a long time. Just make sure it's easy going on the Dremel, because you can quickly make a big gouge in that bucket that you'll never get out. So always easy does it when you're using a Dremel on anything. You can also use a Dremel for the top of the track pads. That's the easiest way to do those. I won't show you that because my Dremel will make a horrible noise when I turn it on this camera. So I've already done that once and it was a disaster. So yeah, that's all for this week's tip. Make sure to stay tuned for the next installment of this.